Imagine trying to learn, like, the delicate art of audio engineering while your boss, who, by the way, is a notoriously violent enforcer for the London mob, is
Yeah.
literally vaulting over a shop counter to beat a man semi-unconscious in the street.
Right. Just a completely normal Tuesday, you know?
Exactly. You are standing there, surrounded by scattered newspapers and cigarettes, suddenly realizing that surviving this exact terrifying environment might be the exact training you need to manage the biggest rock stars in the world.
It really, it completely shatters our traditional ideas of what a professional education is supposed to look like. We usually expect classrooms, mentors, a clear ladder to climb.
A nice, safe corporate track.
Right. We definitely don't expect extortion and street-level brawls to serve as the foundation for a masterclass in business management.
Well, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're exploring, it really is, and our mission here is to dissect this truly bizarre paradox. We're looking at a kid who left school at 15 with 10 no levels, meaning he failed absolutely everything.
Every single subject.
Yeah. He came of age surrounded by mobsters, con artists, and just infamous Soho figures. Yet somehow this chaotic, incredibly dangerous environment served as the ultimate training ground for what became a massively successful 45-year career as a music producer and recording engineer.
Which brings up a really interesting question for anyone listening.
Yeah, I want to ask you, the listener, directly. Have you ever felt like your current surroundings were completely at odds with your goals? Like maybe the job or the environment you're stuck in right now feels like a massive detour from where you actually want to be.
We've all been there, I think.
Right. Well, this deep dive is all about how utter chaos and being in what seems like the absolute wrong place can secretly install the exact mental models you need for your future.
So let's jump right into the action. Let's look at Kenny's very first real exposure to quote-unquote music. It wasn't in a recording studio.
No, not at all.
It was Southwark Cathedral. He was a teenager right in the messy middle of puberty, and for reasons he can barely even explain, he ends up as a choir boy.
And he absolutely hates it. I mean, he is surrounded by these upper-class, snobby kids who he has literally nothing in common with. The cultural mismatch is massive.
Oh, completely.
But, instead of just keeping his head down or just quitting immediately, he does something highly specific.
Yeah.
During the religious services, he intentionally extends his notes.
Yeah.
When the rest of the choir stops singing, Kenny holds his note just a fraction longer.
And the choir master is furious, of course, constantly reprimanding him.
Yeah.
Kenny actually notes in the memoir that this behavior made him about as popular as a condom on the Pope.
Which paints a very clear, very vivid picture of his standing in that church.
It really does.
Ultimately, after about 6 months and a couple of actual physical fistfights with the other choir boys, everyone agrees it's best if he just leaves.
Right. And, on the surface, that just sounds like standard disruptive teenage rebellion. Like a kid who doesn't fit in, just deciding to ruin the experience for everyone else.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because I'm going to push back on that a bit. I don't think he was just being a jerk for the sake of it. It's kind of like putting a punk rocker in a classical symphony. He's just going to play louder to ensure he takes up space, right?
Well, it's a great analogy.
So, was this just teenage rebellion, or are we actually seeing the very first instincts of a future recording engineer playing with room reverb? Because if we look at what he was actually doing, he was basically acting like human sonar.
Yes.
He explicitly notes in the book that he held the notes longer because he wanted to hear his own voice lingering throughout the cathedral's acoustics. By holding the note longer than the rest of the choir, he stripped away the musical noise of the group.
So he could hear the pure data of the room's echo. What's fascinating here is how this early mismatch highlights his core drive. That is the critical distinction. He wasn't just acting out emotionally. He was experimenting with physical space.
Right, the physics of it.
Exactly. Think about the physics of a stone cathedral. You have these massive vaulted ceilings, hard, reflective surfaces. When you introduce a sound into that environment, the low frequencies bounce and decay over several seconds.
And a recording engineer's entire job is to understand and manipulate how sound interacts with a room. They play with space, echo and resonance.
So, as a teenager, placed in this massive stone structure, he's ignoring the religious service completely. He is conducting a live auditory experiment.
He's mixing his own vocal track live in the room just to overpower the mix of the choir.
Yes, he is learning that while he cannot control the social environment he can't make those upper-class kids like him. He can absolutely control the physical environment.
Wow.
He can control the actual sound waves, hitting their ears.
Mm.
And that is a really profound realization. I mean, finding out where you don't fit in is often the first vital step in figuring out who you are. When you're placed in an environment where you don't belong, you can shrink to fit, you can leave, or you can push against the boundaries of that space to see how it reacts.
And the fistfights were a clumsy way of pushing back. But manipulating the decay time of his vocal notes, that was a highly sophisticated way of claiming territory.
Absolutely.
It's so fascinating because at this point, he is manipulating physical space. But when the cathedral inevitably kicks him out, his focus shifts. He turns his attention back to the schoolyard.
Where things get a lot more dangerous.
Yeah, the focus moves from manipulating physical space to manipulating psychological space. He starts observing how his classmates and their families operate, how they manipulate the world around them.
And we should clarify for the listener, these families were operating far, far outside the boundaries of the law.
Oh, definitely. Let's talk about his classmate, Louis Humphreys. Louis was very popular, always dressed in these fashionable clothes, and he was the school's primary supplier of adult magazines.
As one does in the 60s.
Right. And Kenny mentions that Louis also introduced him to his first Jamaican woodbine, which, for anyone unfamiliar with 1960s British slang, means Louis handed him his first marijuana joint.
And Kenny casually notes this resulted in a lot of laughter.
Lots of laughter. A standard teenage experience, perhaps, but Louis's background was anything but standard. Nobody really knew where Louis was getting all this contraband until years later.
The family business.
Exactly. It turns out his mother was Rusty Gaynor, who was widely known as the Queen of Soho and like the most famous exotic dancer of the 1960s. And his father was King Jim Humphreys, a West End club owner and notorious pornographer.
King Jim Humphreys is a massive figure in London's criminal history. I mean, his eventual disclosures about police corruption sent 12 Scotland Yard detectives to prison.
12? For taking protection money?
Yeah.
I mean, put yourself in Kenny's shoes for a second. You're sitting in math class next to a kid whose father is currently orchestrating the downfall of a dozen Scotland Yard detectives.
It completely normalizes a worldview where the rules of society are just, well, suggestions.
Exactly. But as wild as Louis's family was, they are literally just the warm-up act for another classmate's father. This classmate was known as Mad Billy, and his dad went by the name Colin the Con.
Which is a heavy title to live up to.
He absolutely lives up to it. Kenny breaks down this highly specific scam Colin pulled, and I really want to walk through the mechanics of it because it is just brilliant.
Let's hear it.
Okay, step 1. Colin buys 1,000 commemorative coins from a publication called Exchange and Mart, which was essentially like the paper version of eBay back then.
Right.
He buys them for 1 shilling each. To put that in context, a shilling was essentially pocket change. Tiny money. The coins were from some obscure country, and Colin immediately realizes they are completely, totally worthless.
And a normal person just writes that off as a bad purchase and throws the coins in a drawer, right?
Not Colin. Step 2. Colin visits a good friend who owns a jewelry shop in Bond Street. Now, Bond Street is a highly affluent, very prestigious shopping district in London.
Very fancy.
Colin begs his friend to just put 4 of these worthless coins in the shop window with a price tag of 10 shillings each. 10 shillings was a lot of money, literally 10 times what Colin paid.
And the friend agrees.
The friend thinks it's a total waste of window space, but eventually agrees to leave them there for a couple of weeks.
Okay, this is the crucial mechanism of the scam. He's establishing a physical anchor.
Yes. Step 3. Colin places an advertisement in the South London press, offering his stash of coins for 5 shillings each.
Half the Bond Street price.
Exactly. And step 4 is the trap. A punter, a prospective buyer, meets with Colin. The punter looks at the coins, laughs right in Colin's face, and tells him he's crazy. He says 5 shillings is a massive ripoff and the coins belong in the bin.
And the punter is entirely correct. He is looking at the intrinsic value of the metal.
But Colin doesn't argue the intrinsic value. He just shrugs and says, "They may look like rubbish to you, mate, but they're selling them in Bond Street for 10 bob each."
Oh, that's so good.
Right. The punter, wanting to prove Colin wrong, actually travels all the way to Bond Street. He looks in the window. He sees the 4 coins sitting in a reputable jeweler's window. He sees the 10 shilling price tag.
And he rushes back.
He rushes back to Colin and buys the entire stash of 1,000 coins at 5 shillings each, utterly convinced he has stumbled into the deal of a lifetime.
It is a flawless, truly flawless execution of what behavioral economists call anchoring bias.
So what does this all mean? Because, let's be honest, Colin literally engineered a false market out of thin air. It's the 1960s equivalent of a crypto pump-and-dump scheme. He didn't sell the coin, he sold the illusion of a bargain.
Exactly. He is a thief lying about the value of a coin. But he isn't lying about the Bond Street price. That price actually exists in the window.
Right, it's real data to the punter.
What Colin understands, and what Kenny is absorbing by watching all this, is the profound psychological difference between intrinsic value and perceived value.
Yeah.
The punter didn't buy those coins because he had some sudden passion for obscure commemorative currency.
No, of course not.
He bought them because he wanted the dopamine hit of outsmarting the system. He wanted the arbitrage.
He wanted the thrill of pulling a fast one on Colin. I mean, think about the last time you, the listener, bought something on a massive discount. Did you actually need the item, or did you just want the rush of beating the retail price?
That feeling is exactly what Colin weaponized. And Colin's golden rule, which he passed down, was, if you appeal to people's greed, you will always make money.
Wow.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, applying this to Kenny's future in the music industry, the parallel is just stunning.
How so?
Inherently, a piece of vinyl with some audio pressed into it has very little objective value. It's just cheap plastic. So how do record labels sell millions of them? How do you create a frenzy for a new band?
You have to engineer a market out of thin air.
Exactly. You manufacture desire using context. Colin used a Bond Street window to make a coin seem valuable. A record producer uses the right image, exclusive parties, and manufactured rumors to make a band seem valuable. You are selling the illusion of exclusivity. It's street-level marketing.
That is incredible. So Kenny is mastering the mechanics of perceived value, but meanwhile, his formal, traditional education is completely falling apart. He mentions that he failed his math exams more times than he could count, which is wonderfully ironic.
Very ironic.
He leaves school at 15 with 10 no-levels, an entirely blank academic slate.
Which, in the 1960s, usually meant a life of hard manual labor.
But Kenny notes that failing those exams was, quote, of little significance. And that's because his real-world education and surviving extreme volatility was about to hit its absolute peak.
The ultimate masterclass.
Yeah. He takes a part-time job at a local newsagent on the corner of Braganza Street and DeLon Street in Kennington. The shop is run by a man named Roger Pure, and Roger also happens to be the manager of the young rock band Kenny had just formed.
We really need to properly contextualize who Roger Pure is.
Please do.
He is not some music industry guy who knows how to book studio time. He has a closely shaved head, a heavily scarred face, and he is an active, known member of the Richardson gang.
And the Richardsons were a major, incredibly violent criminal syndicate in South London, famously at war with the Cray twins.
And the violence wasn't abstract for Roger. His wife, Mary, was the sister of George Cornell.
Right.
Just a year prior, Ronnie Cray had walked into the Blind Bear pub and shot George Cornell dead. That is the level of intense gang warfare happening in the background while Kenny is literally just trying to sell newspapers and get his band a Saturday night gig.
The baseline level of threat in that environment is just astronomical. I mean, Kenny was routinely woken up by a phone call from Mary at 4 a.m. telling him to get down to the shop to help label the morning newspapers.
Why at 4 a.m.?
Because Roger had been in some brutal altercation with the Crays overnight and was currently at a hospital getting stitched up.
Unbelievable.
And when Roger actually was in the shop, his approach to retail was terrifying. He would sit with his feet propped up on the counter so he could reach the cigarettes in the cash register without having to actually stand up for the customers.
So a customer would walk in and ask, could I have a pack of cigarettes, mate?
Roger would toss the pack onto the counter and snap, "That's 2 shillings and 8 pence, and I'm not your fucking mate."
Wow. He is establishing absolute, unyielding dominance in every single interaction.
Yeah.
He refuses to concede even an inch of social pleasantry.
And if you challenge that dominance, the consequences were immediate. Kenny recalls a Saturday morning when a man comes into the shop to argue with Roger. It's tense, but manageable, right up until the man makes a derogatory comment about Mary's dead brother, George.
Oh, no.
Without a word, Roger vaults over the newsagent counter, drags the man out onto the street, and unleashes a flurry of punches that leaves the guy semi-unconscious on the pavement.
The speed with which the situation goes from a verbal argument to extreme physical violence is what characterizes that underworld lifestyle. There is no de-escalation.
None. And the craziest part is Roger's reaction afterward. He walks back into the shop, straightens his shirt, looks at a terrified Kenny, and casually says, "I'll be upstairs in the flat if you need me."
He just goes to have tea.
He just goes upstairs to have a cup of tea. The beaten man stumbles away, but the situation isn't over. 3 hours later, four massive, imposing men walk into the tiny shop. Kenny refers to them as the gruesome foursome. The largest one looks at Kenny and asks, "Is Roger here?"
Kenny's stomach must have just hit the floor.
He's shaking. He shouts up the stairs for Roger. Roger and Mary come down, and suddenly the tension just evaporates. It's all smiles and handshakes. These men are Roger's friends.
Oh, thank God.
Right. So Roger leaves with them. Kenny, still terrified, tells Mary he was uneasy about those men. Mary just smiles warmly and tells him not to worry. Those are close friends, and they are just going out to pay a little visit to the man Roger beat up earlier.
A visit.
Yeah. And Kenny notes he was quite certain they weren't planning to offer him an apology.
It is a really stark exposure to organized retributive violence.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Because despite working for a scarred mob enforcer who vaults counters to assault people, Kenny explicitly states that under Roger's management, his young band never had trouble securing gigs.
I bet they didn't.
And they always got paid smoothly. So I have to ask, is it possible the mob was actually providing better artist management than actual record labels?
Well, in a purely mechanical sense, yeah. Managing an artist requires securing resources, enforcing contracts, and protecting the talent. Roger enforced contracts through sheer intimidation. Venue owners do not shortchange a band managed by the Richardson gang.
Definitely not.
But the actual value for Kenny wasn't learning how to threaten venue owners. The value was neurological. He was learning how to navigate extreme volatility.
He was calibrating his nervous system.
Exactly. When you are exposed to high-stress environments like labeling newspapers at 4 a.m. while waiting to see if your boss survived a knife fight, or keeping your composure when 4 gang enforcers walk into your tiny shop, your brain's amygdala adapts.
The fear center of the brain.
Right. Your baseline for what constitutes a crisis shifts dramatically.
So a normal person's panic threshold is, say, a flat tire or a rude email. Kenny's panic threshold becomes targeted gang violence.
Yes. Now, fast forward a few years. Kenny is sitting behind a massive mixing desk in a top-tier recording studio. A famous lead singer throws a temper tantrum because his vocal monitor isn't loud enough.
Or a guitarist threatens to quit the band over a wrong chord.
Or a record executive is screaming about a blown budget. To a normal audio engineer, this is a highly stressful, career-threatening environment. They would freeze up.
But to Kenny Denton,
To Kenny, it's nothing.
it doesn't even register on his radar.
He learned emotional regulation in an environment where failing to regulate your emotions meant you might get caught in the crossfire of the Crays and the Richardsons. If you can survive Roger Puree, a rock star throwing a microphone stand is child's play.
That makes so much sense.
He learned how to manage massive, dangerous egos without absorbing their panic.
It is the ultimate stress testing of a future producer's temperament. Eventually, Kenny's band disbands after about a year, and that marks the turning point. He realizes it's time to move on, and he leverages every single piece of this bizarre education.
All of it comes together.
He takes his understanding of manipulating acoustics from the cathedral choir. He takes his deep knowledge of anchoring bias and human greed from watching Colin the Con engineer false markets. And he takes his masterful ability to manage volatile, unpredictable egos from working under Roger Puree.
It's the perfect synthesis.
He synthesizes all of it to secure a job in a recording studio, launching a 45-year career as a recording engineer, record producer, and songwriter.
It really forces us to reconsider the nature of the music industry itself. We treat it as an art form, a purely creative endeavor. But what Kenny's story reveals is that at its highest levels, the music industry is fundamentally an underworld business disguised as art.
Wow.
It requires the exact same skill set, manipulating perception, manufacturing desire, and surviving massive, volatile egos.
Which brings us to our final thought. Early on, Kenny mentioned that leaving school with 10 no levels was of little significance to him. I want you, the listener, to think about what would have happened if he hadn't failed.
If he had been a model student.
Yeah. If Kenny had studied hard, passed those math exams, and gotten his qualifications, society would have rewarded him. He likely would have been funneled straight into a safe, traditional, predictable desk job.
He never would have worked at that Kennington newsagent.
He never would have met Roger Puree, he never would have watched Colin the Con, and he never would have received this terrifying, invaluable underworld masterclass.
He would have failed in the music industry because he wouldn't have had the necessary training to survive it.
Exactly. It makes you wonder, How often do the academic failures we stress over or the closed doors we desperately cry about actually save us from a completely mundane life? How often is utter chaos exactly what we need to find our true calling?